Hey everyone! Today I wanted to share my tutorial for how to make this little guy that I'm calling a Gingerbread Buddy. I realize I haven't really made very many wintry themed projects, so I have a few in the works to share with you this year as we head into the season. I've got all of the materials that I've used to create this project in the video description below, as well as the link to the full pattern on my blog. In addition to that, I've also timestamped each section, round, and row to help you navigate this pattern like a pro. Cool, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're starting with the head, and we need to begin with this light taupe kind of brown color, and we need to form a magic ring. Or you can chain two and add your first round stitches to the center of that chain two. Alright, so I've got my magic ring formed and I'm ready for round one. I'm going to put 7 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. So don't forget, as you work your magic ring, you need to work over the tail, and you also want to mark that first stitch of your round to help you keep track of where you are in your pattern. Alright, when you have all 7 of your single crochet stitches added to your magic ring, we're going to hold on to that last one that we made and pull the tail to close the ring off. And we're ready for round 2, where we're going to increase in each of the 7 stitches we made from round 1. Let's take our stitch marker out, and then put 2 single crochet stitches in the first stitch from round 1. Don't forget to mark the first of that increase to keep track of where we are. Alright, so I just made my last increase for round 2. Before I move on to round 3, I'm going to pull that magic ring tail pretty tightly one last time. Flip my work over, and then give that magic ring tail a trim, short but not all the way off. It's going to keep that out of our way as we keep working around. Alright, with that magic ring tail trimmed, I'm ready for round 3. We've got a pattern to follow here, so in those asterisks there's instructions. 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase. We're going to do everything that's inside of those asterisks in the order that it appears, the amount of times indicated outside. So we need to do that pattern of 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, 7 times. That's going to give us 21 stitches at the end of round 3. So let's dive in and give that a shot, starting with the first single crochet stitch here. So 1 stitch in the first stitch of the round, remark, and then an increase in the next stitch. So that's everything once. We're going to repeat that pattern, 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, 6 more times, and that'll take us all the way to the stitch marker. Alright, that's the end of round 3 for me. Round 4, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 21 stitches that we made for round 3. So just 1 stitch in each all the way around. Last time I'll remind you to put your stitch marker back in that first stitch. Alright, that was the last single crochet stitch of round 4. Ready for round 5. We've got a new asterisk pattern to follow, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So when you see it say 2SC, that's not an increase. It's going to always say INC for an increase. That confuses people sometimes. So 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, 1 single crochet stitch in the second stitch of the round, and then an increase. And just like that last pattern that we followed for round 3, for round 5 we're just going to keep repeating that 2 single crochet stitches, increase, 6 more times for a total of 7 repetitions and 28 stitches at the end of the round. So 1 single crochet stitch, 2 stitches, increase. Alright, that wraps up round 5 for me. Round 6, you've got a new pattern to repeat. 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. You're probably starting to pick up the pattern here. So here's my first. There are those 3 single crochet stitches and then an increase. And that's 1 repetition, another 6. That'll take me all the way around this round. Cool, that was the end of round 6. Ready for round 7. Just 1 single crochet stitch in the 35 stitches we made for round 6. So just 1 in each, all the way around. That was the end of round 7 for me. I'm ready for round 8. Got another asterisk pattern here. 1 single crochet stitch the next 4 stitches of the round. And then 1 increase. And you guessed it, we're going to repeat that sequence 6 more times for a total of 7, and that should give us 42 stitches at the end of this round. Alright, that was that last increase there for round 8. Rounds 9 through 14, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the 42 stitches we made for round 8. So don't forget, as you start each new round, you're going to want to move your stitch marker up from the first stitch of the previous to the new one that you just made. Helps you keep track of where you are. I will see you back here whenever I have made that last single crochet stitch of round 14, and we're ready to move on to round 15 together. Alright, so I just finished that last single crochet stitch of round 14, and I'm ready to move on to round 15. We've got a new asterisk pattern to repeat, and a new type of stitch that I recently just discovered was a thing, so let's start with what we know first, though. 4 single crochet stitches, 1 in the next 4 of the round. And then we're going to decrease, but I've recently did a little research. I've had folks message even saying, hey, I have holes in my work while I'm decreasing and the stuffing's kind of leaking through. And I'm like, yeah, that's just kind of how it works. Except it's not. I recently discovered that if you work your decreases in the front loops only of the stitches that you're decreasing in, it'll leave the back loop behind, which kind of adds as a buffer, keeping that stuffing from leaking out of your project. So give it a try, see if you like it. It's not crucial that you do your decreases this way, but this is how I've started doing mine, and I really like the results. So we'll work our regular single crochet 2 together decrease, but rather than going through both stitches, we're going to just snag the front loop, yarn under and draw through, and then do the same thing in the next front loop, yarn under and draw through, and then yarn over and draw through all 3 of the loops left on your hook. So that leaves that back loop of those 2 stitches on the inside of your work and kind of helps keep the gaps full of this brown color that we're working with. Give it a try, see if you like it. If not, no worries. We're going to keep repeating that pattern though of 4 single crochet stitches and then decreasing 6 more times until we have 35 stitches and we're at the end of the round. Alright, that was the end of round 15 for me. I'm ready for round 16. New asterisk pattern, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then another decrease in the front loops or not, depending on your own preference. So we're going to decrease. And then repeat that pattern 6 more times for a total of 7 repeats. 3 single crochet stitches, decrease. Alright, that was the end of round 16 for me. I'm ready for round 17. 2 single crochet stitches, 1 in the next 2 stitches of our round. So there's my first and my second, and then another decrease. And we're going to repeat that pattern, you guessed it, 6 more times for a total of 7 all the way around. Alright, there's my last decrease, and I'm ready for round 18, which isn't a full round. We're just going to do 3 decreases and then fasten off. So I'll make my first. I don't need to mark it. Here's my second decrease. And one last decrease. So we're going to leave the rest of the stitches of this round unworked, and we're going to fasten off by slip stitching through this next stitch. So yarn under and draw up a loop, and draw through the only other loop on my crochet hook. And then we need a long tail to sew with, because we're going to use the tail from the head to attach the head to the body. So reserve yourself quite a bit of tail. I always like to have extra just in case, you know, the worst happens and I don't have to get more tail to sew with. So I'll leave myself probably 24 inches here. And then we're gonna pull that slip stitch loop on our hook long until that tail we cut passes through it as well, and then tighten it down by pulling. Alright, so there's the head crocheted. Let's go ahead and get some of the elements added to it. So the safety eyes are up first. Alright, so I've got my safety eyes ready to go. I'm using these 16mm painted ones. I've got them linked in the video description below if you'd like to use the same, but feel free to kind of be creative and use whatever you'd like. You can even embroider the eyes on if you want. But I like to go ahead and use the stem from 1 to count down to the rounds that they're going to go in between. And we're aiming for rounds 11 and 10. So I'm going to count down from this magic ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then push that stem through the fabric in between round 10 and round 11. And then I like my Gingerbread Buddy's eyes to be kind of wider set. I think it looks cute. Now, of course, you can change this if you'd like, but I like to count 5 stitches apart. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And since this is a bigger eye, I'm actually going to go over 1 more stitch. And the eye is going to cover up that 6th stitch, but leave 5 kind of exposed in between the 2. Alright, so once you have those eyes placed and you're happy with where they are, we can go ahead and lock them in place. Grab the little plastic backs that come with, flip your work inside out, and push them down onto the stem until they click rather satisfyingly. Alright, so with those safety eyes placed, we're going to go ahead and add some stuffing next. So when I stuff, I like to think about stretching the heads open a little bit. The reason I chose to put 7 single crochet stitches in that ring rather than 6 or 8 is because it gives it more of an oblong shape, and I find it's really cute. So we're going to put some stuffing in and think potato and less ball. We're going to pull so that we're stuffing really, really well on the outsides to either side of the eye. When you stretch the stuffing apart like this, you want to add some more down into the center as well. So, and then give it another stretch. Alright, so that is the stuffing added to the inside of the head. Let's go ahead and get the mouth embroidered on next. So we're going to be using some black embroidery floss. Alright, so I've got my needle threaded with some of that embroidery floss, and we're going to get the mouth and the eyebrows embroidered on in one fell swoop. So we're going to start by taking our embroidery needle, and we're going to come down through some of the fabric of our work, but in the space between stitches. So when you send your needle down, be sure not to snag any of this material here. We want just straight through. And then I'm going to come up in the top of round 12, closest to the eye over on this side of my work. So you can see I'm just snagging some of the top part of that round. And then when we pull the needle through, we want to make sure to leave quite a bit of a tail on the outside. We're going to come back, tie onto this tail, and then pull the knot to the inside. So don't pull all the way through. Then we're going to make the first corner of the smile by sewing down into round 12 here at an angle. So about 1 stitch over. And then we're going to send our needle up into the top of round 12 over on this side next to this eye. So that makes the first side of our smile. We'll mirror that same stitch over here, so sewing down into the bottom of this round here. And coming up out through that same stitch we went down through for the corner of the smile on this side. Then we'll stretch 1 straight stitch across the way to close off the smile. And then we're going to come up and sew the eyebrows on. So the eyebrows are about 2 rows above where the eyes are, maybe the top of that 3rd round above. So come up halfway through where the eye is, sort of in the middle here. Okay, you can see that makes the smile on the bottom of our gingerbread buddy's face. Then we're going to sew an angled stitch down over the row that we came up through. So it's like going down at an angle, and even with the outside corner of this eye. And we're going to repeat that same on the other side. So come up through about halfway where the eye is. And sew down, adding that eyebrow. Then we're going to send the needle all the way across and up through that same space between fabric over here on this side. And be really careful on the way up that you don't snag any of the fabric of any of those stitches. And don't pull too tight or you'll pull the eyebrow in, like I did. There we go. Alright, so once you have the eyebrows added on, we can go ahead and unthread our embroidery needle. And then we're going to tie the 2 ends together. So the tail we left behind and the one we finished sewing with. I like to tie just a square knot. So cross them over, tighten down. And I double knot it because I worry that things will come untied, especially if this little guy's going to someone small. Give those a trim close to the fabric of your work, and you can discard or reuse, depends on how much you've got left over. Then we're going to take the end of our needle and we're going to slip it next to the stitch next to where those knots are, and then pull the fabric of our work up. And that's going to kind of send the knot to the inside. If it's being stubborn, you can also take the eye of your needle and just push it to the inside too. Like I wasn't asking, you're going in there. Alright, so there is the smile. If your eyebrow on this side sort of slipped inside your work, you can just pull it back up with your needle. It's because I pulled that knot too tight. Alright, and that is the head and the embroidery done. So let's move on to the next part of our pattern. Next up, we're going to make the cheeks. We need to make 2 of these, so I'll walk you through the first. You'll need to make a second, and then we'll come back and get them attached to the face. So we're going to begin with this pink colored yarn and by forming a magic ring, or again chaining 2 and then putting all of the first round stitches inside of that first chain you make. All right, and the only round of the cheek is round 1. We're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. All right, once you've got all 6 of those, you can pull the tail of your magic ring to tighten. And then we're going to slip stitch to that first single crochet stitch we added to our magic ring. So just go through, yarn under and drop a loop, and then pull that loop through. And then depending on how you're planning to attach the cheeks, you can either glue them or sew them. Depends on who you're giving it to. If it's just a decoration, you can glue. If it's going to be a toy, I would sew them on. But I'll do one of each. Let's say I'm going to sew this one on, so I'll reserve myself 12 inches or so of a tail. Give it a trim. Then I'm going to yarn over with that tail that I just made and draw it through the loop on my hook, and then keep pulling until it's all the way through and tighten. Alright, so there's our first cheek made. Let's go ahead and make one more, and then we can come back together and get them attached. Alright, so I have both of my cheeks done, so let's process these as if we're going to sew one and glue one. That way you can see how they get attached depending on your style of attaching. If you're going to be sewing your cheek on, here's how I like to attach. So I'm going to take the magic ring tail that's just on the back side, or the slip knot tail depending on how you started your cheek. Get that threaded through the eye of one of my needles. And then we're going to grab the head, and the cheeks are going to be positioned to the outside of each eye, and then so the top is sort of even with round 12 where the smile begins. So if you're sewing your cheek on, I like to weave the magic ring tail or the slip knot tail in first, by just sending it straight through and out through just a random stitch here on the head. Pulling kind of tight and then unthreading. So the nice thing about that is it weaves it in, but it also helps anchor that cheek onto the face so it doesn't slip around while we're sewing. Then we can thread our needle with that longer tail that we left to sew with. And I'm going to back stitch this cheek on. So to back stitch, or at least my understanding of it, is I'm going to go through this next stitch here of the cheek and down into the fabric of my work, and then come up through one stitch away. So down and then up through, skipping over a stitch in between. Then I'm going to go back. So I'm going to go back to the stitch that I skipped. I'm going to go down. And then I'm going to come up again, skipping one stitch, coming up through the next stitch over from where I skipped. So you're sort of sewing straight stitches but backwards, thus the name back stitch. Keep repeating that until you've sewn through all 6 of those stitches. So you only need to do this 3 times. Fairly easy to sew on. And then when you get to your last stitch, the last back stitch you're going to make, you'll go down in through and then just up through that first stitch we went down through. The great thing about back stitch is it hides all of the stitches we're sewing with because we're sewing with a different color than the head itself. So to secure this cheek in place, we're going to tie a surface knot or a French knot depending if you come from an embroidery background. So we're going to make a little loop with what we've been sewing. So make a little O shape over the surface of that cheek that we added. Snag a little of the fabric of that last stitch that you sewed through. And then as you come up through the fabric of that stitch, come up through the O that you made. Sort of closing the circuit. And we're going to keep pulling, and you'll see that little O is going to wrap itself around our tail, tying a knot. Then we're going to weave this tail in and hide this knot by sewing down really kind of close to where that knot is on the surface of our work. And then out through just any old stitch here on the head. And when you pull, it's going to send that knot inside. I like to kind of tug underneath the fabric too to make sure the cheek isn't kind of sucked into the fabric of the head. Then we can unthread our needle and pull both tails tight and trim them, weaving them in. So that's how I will sew the cheeks on. Now if you're feeling a little lazier and you're feeling like this is just going to be a decoration, let's glue this one on. So first up, we'll just trim the magic ring tail short. And then we'll take this tail that we've cut, thread it through our needle, and weave it in. So I like to sew down through the fabric of the cheek and then back up a couple of times, just weaving this in. Then we'll trim it close to the surface of the back of the cheek. And then with this, we'll just add a blob of glue here on the back side and press into place. Goes much faster but is less secure. So if you're planning on giving this to someone who's going to love on it a little bit, I would recommend sewing the cheeks on. Alright, so there are the cheeks attached. Let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, next up we're going to make the body. So we're again working with this light taupe brown colored yarn. And we're going to start by forming another magic ring. Or again, chaining 2 and then placing all of the single crochet stitches in the slip knot for round 1. Alright, I've got that magic ring formed. Round 1, we're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of that magic ring. Friendly reminder to put your stitch marker in the first stitch. Alright, I've got all 6 of those single crochet stitches in the magic ring. Give it a pull to close off the round and start in on round 2. I'm increasing in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's the end of round 2 for me. I'm going to pull my magic ring tail tight one last time, flip my work over, just like with the head, give it a trim, not all the way off, just short, and discard what I trimmed. Keeps it out of our way as we continue working around. And we're ready for round 3. We've got a asterisk pattern to follow, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then 1 increase. And we'll repeat that pattern 5 more times for a total of 6. Alright, that's the end of round 3. Round 4, a new parentheses pattern, 2 single crochet stitches before the increase this time around. So there's 1 single crochet stitch, 2, and then the increase. Repeat that pattern 5 more times for a total of 6. So 2 single crochet stitches, increase. Alright, that's round 4 done. Round 5, 3 single crochet stitches, increase. Picking up on the pattern here. So there's my first. There are those 3, then my increase. And repeat that 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, that was round 5 done for me. Round 6. We've got 4 single crochet stitches to make before the increase this time. Just getting bigger as we work. So there's my first. 2, 3, 4 single crochet stitches, then increase. And you've guessed it, we're going to repeat that 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Cool, that's the end of round 6. I'm ready for round 7. So round 7, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every back loop only all the way around. So we've worked in the front loops, or at least if you've done the front loop decrease like I have, you've done the front loops. Back loop is the one closest to the back side of our work. So your magic ringtail, the side that sticks off of, that's the back of our work. I like to think about taking my hook and sort of just diving between the two sides of the V of each stitch, so that V shape it makes. That's the back loop there on my crochet hook. And then from here it's just like a regular single crochet stitch. You'll yarn under and draw up a loop, and yarn over and draw through 2, and then mark because it's the first of the round. So we're just going to keep adding single crochet stitches to those back loops, 1 in each back loop all the way around. That should be 36 back loops. Alright, so that's round 7 done for me. Rounds 8 through 13, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in both sides, so not the back loops anymore. 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So just like we did with the head where we had a bunch of rows that we repeated over and over, you'll want to move your stitch marker up when you start each new round. Here I am going in on round 8, remarking that first stitch. But I'll see you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 13, and we're ready to move on together to round 14 in the pattern. Alright, so I just made that last single crochet stitch of round 13, and I'm ready to move on to round 14, where we're going to start decreasing the body here, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 of the round. And then a decrease. So again, I like to work mine in the front loops to help reduce the amount of stuffing that can show through as you decrease. But we're going to repeat that pattern of 4 single crochet stitches, decrease 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around this round. Alright, so that's the last decrease there of round 14. Round 15, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 15 done. Round 16, got a new asterisks pattern to repeat, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. So there's that first. Then a decrease. And repeat that sequence 5 more times for a total of 6. Okay, that's round 16 done, and round 17, which is the last round here of the body, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then decreasing. And repeating that pattern, 2 single crochet stitches, decrease 5 more times. Alright, so there was that last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off. So I'll take my stitch marker out. And I'm going to slip stitch to the stitch it was just in, the first one of that last round we made. Then I don't need a very long tail, I'm just going to tuck this in, so trim yourself 4 inches or so. Then pull that last loop until the tail passes through and tighten down. Then we're going to stuff that tail to the inside and add some stuffing to the inside of the body here. So I like my gingerbread man to be rather rotund, so I put a lot of stuffing in, and then just like with the head, emphasize stretching the stuffing out to the sides. So really filling up every space inside of the body here. So we don't want to push a bunch of stuffing to the bottom of the body. We want this to stay pretty flat. So again, really stretch the stuffing to kind of get it to every corner of the body here. But once you've got it stuffed, we're ready to go ahead and attach the head and the body together. Before we start though, when we added the single crochet stitches to the back loops only, it created a jog. So I find the jog to be kind of unattractive. I like to kind of hide it by putting it at the back of the body rather than the front. So find that jog and then turn your body over so you're looking at the front. Then we can go ahead and grab the head. And the head for me, the tail is on the opposite side, so like the tail's on the back side of the head, which is good news because we're going to want the back of the head and the back of the body to line up. So what I'm really getting at is here, we don't want the jog at the front, so we don't want the face and the jog on the same side. So we're going to set the head here on top of the body, and then the stitches line up 1 to 1. We have 18 stitches in the last round of the head, and 18 stitches in the last round of the body, and I did that very deliberately to make it super easy to sew on. So we're going to take our needle, go through one of the stitches here on the back side of the body because I'm on the back side of the head, and then sew up through one of the stitches on the last round of the head. And we're just going to keep whip stitching, going through each stitch as we sew, and then pulling pretty tightly at the end of each stitch. And that's going to cinch the head and the body and form a really defined neck, kind of where the two of them meet. So we're just going to keep sewing around. Alright, so I'm almost all the way around, and if you need, you can add a little extra stuffing in the space between the head and the body. I really overstuffed the head, and very intentionally so I wouldn't need to add more to this section in between. But if you need to add some more, now is a good time, now that we've almost joined the two together. If not, you can keep sewing. On that last stitch to attach the two together. There we go, I'll give it one final pretty tight tug. You can see as you tug, it really defines the space between the head and the body, and I think it looks really cute. The arms are going to kind of slot into that space too. Alright, so to secure all these hard sewn stitches that we've used to attach the head and the body, we're going to make another surface knot, French knot, securing the stitches we've made. So make yourself a little loop here, grab some of the fabric of your work and sew up through that loop. Pull the tail and the loop will wrap around, and then send that into the head to weave it in. I'm going to weave mine in a second time, so go back through that same stitch I came up through and then just come out through another spot. Then we can unthread our needle, and by pulling tightly on the tail we woven in, we get it woven completely in. Discard or reuse whatever you didn't end up weaving in. And that is the head and the body attached. Let's move on to the next part of our pattern. Alright, next up is the icing. So we're going to be working with some of this white colored yarn. Start by again forming a magic ring or chaining 2. Alright, now that I have my magic ring formed, I'm ready for round 1. We're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Alright, when you have all 6 of those single crochet stitches inside of your magic ring, you can pull the tail to close off round 1, and we're ready for round 2. We're just going to be increasing in each stitch all the way around. Alright, there's my last increase for round 2. Pull that magic ring tail tight one last time. Give it a trim, short but not off. And we're ready for round 3, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then following that with 1 increase. And we're going to repeat that pattern 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Okay, that's the end of round 3. Round 4, we've got 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So there's my first and second, and then 1 increase. And you guessed it, we're going to repeat that 5 more times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, so there's that last increase. I'm ready for round 5, which is my last round. We're going to be adding some of the swoops for our icing here. Take our stitch marker out, and we're going to slip stitch where our marker just was. Go ahead and mark that slip stitch. Then in the next stitch of the round, we're going to make 1 half double crochet stitch. So to do that, we're going to take our hook and swing around and yarn over. So we're going to wrap that around our hook. Go through the next stitch of the round, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then yarn over and draw through all 3 to form a half double crochet stitch. Then in the next stitch, we're going to place 2 stitches, 1 double crochet stitch and then 1 half double crochet stitch. Double crochet stitch starts off the same way our half double crochet stitch does. We're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, go through that next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop. Then yarn over, draw through 2, then yarn over and draw through the remaining 2 double crochet. Then we'll make a half double crochet stitch in that same place. So wrap around, go through, yarn under and draw up a loop, yarn over and draw through all 3. So there are those 2 stitches coming out of the same stitch from the previous round. Then 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch. Then we're going to repeat that pattern of slip stitch, half double crochet stitch, double crochet stitch, half double crochet stitch, single crochet stitch. We're going to repeat that 5 more times. It's going to give us 6 of these swoops all the way around. So I'm going to start off with a slip stitch, Alright, so that's all the way around for me. I've got one last thing to do to fasten off. I'm going to slip stitch into the first stitch of the round, that slip stitch we made to start this. Then I'm going to cut a long tail to sew with. Then I'm going to pull that tail through the slip stitch that I made and tighten down. And we're ready to get this attached to the top of our Gingerbread Buddy's head. So we'll go ahead and grab that, and it's going to go basically directly centered on the top of his head. So you can make it so that the swoops kind of swoop, this one's in the middle, or you can rotate it a little bit, up to you. But once you've got it where you'd like it to go, we'll thread the eye of our needle with the tail left over here from the icing. And I like to sew the slip stitches down first. So I'm going to kind of dive underneath the fabric of the body and then up through that first slip stitch here and pull tight. Then sew down through the body and up through where the next slip stitch is. And then pull that tight. Do the same thing here. So I'm going to pull down through the body and come up through that slip stitch. Pulling kind of tight. And sew back down and come up through the next. So I'm just going to keep sewing each slip stitch here on the icing. Alright, so here's this last one. I'm going to sew back up through where I came down through that very first stitch. You can see I pulled all those tight and it adds this cute little ruffle shape and makes it kind of look like someone really did just pour some frosting onto his head here. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off by tying just another surface knot, French knot here on the top of my frosting. Sewing up through that loop. Then I will weave this tail straight down into the frosting and out through a random stitch here on the head. Once you've done that, cut. And that is the icing attached. So we're ready to move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next up is the holly leaf that we're going to use to decorate with. So we're going to be working with this green colored yarn, and we're going to start by tying a slip knot because we're going to be chaining. Alright, I've got my slip knot tied and I'm ready to start in on row 1. There's really only one row for this leaf. We're going to start by chaining 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then we're going to place our first single crochet stitch in the second chain from our hook. So remember, we don't count the loop on our hook ever as a stitch. So first, second chain from my hook, place my first single crochet stitch. Then we're going to make a chain 2 picot stitch. So to do that, we'll chain 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then slip stitch in that first chain that we made. So go through, yarn under, drop a loop, draw that loop through. And then we're going to repeat that pattern. So we've got 1 single crochet stitch in the next chain, chain 2 picot, so chain 2, and slip stitch to the bottom of the chain. There's that second repetition. Here's this last single crochet stitch on this side, chain 2, slip stitch through. And that takes us to our slip knot. We're going to place 3 single crochet stitches inside. It's going to help us flip around to the other side of the leaf. So I'll go through. There's 1, 2, 3 single crochet stitches. Pull your slip knot tail tight, and then I like to weave this in as I go. So I'm going to weave my slip knot tail in as I work up the other side of the chain. So we've got 3 stitches that we need to place, starting with 1 single crochet stitch here in that first chain on the other side, then chain 2 picot, make our second single crochet stitch, and yes, I'm taking the tail with me too. I don't like to come back and weave them in. Chain 2 picot stitch, and the last chain here on this side. I'll go through, make my single crochet stitch, and then 1 last chain 2 picot. Then to close off the leaf, we're going to make a single crochet stitch in the first single crochet stitch we made on the other side. So go through that stitch and single crochet. Then we're going to kind of turn our leaf and then work down the center of the chain that we worked both sides of, just adding a slip stitch to each. So I'm going to go through where that first chain is, make my first slip stitch, go through the next chain, We're just slip stitching our way down the center of this leaf. Then we're also going to go through the third single crochet stitch that we made to kind of swing around the leaf, this one right here. And that forms the holly leaf. So we're ready to fasten off. Cut yourself a long tail to sew with. 12 inches or so ought to do the trick. Then we'll yarn over and draw that tail through that last stitch and keep pulling till it passes through and tighten down. If you were a good noodle like me and you wove your tail in as you worked, you can trim it. If not, weave that slip knot tail in and trim. And we are ready to get that attached to the icing on the top of the head. Let's go ahead and grab your gingerbread buddy. And then I like mine to kind of be off at the side and really close to the magic ring where we started the frosting, the icing. So kind of just set it where you'd like it. If you want, you can use some straight pins to pin it in place. Then we'll thread the tail we've left to sew with through the eye of our needle. And we're going to just sew through a couple of the stitches here at the front of the holly leaf to hold it on. So I'm going to grab some frosting, grab the leaf. So we're going to keep sewing just across the front of the holly leaf here, getting it tacked on. Then tie another surface knot on the fabric of the leaf. And down through the fabric of the leaf, fabric of the icing, and out through any stitch here on the head to weave the tail in, and trim. So there's the holly leaf attached. Let's go ahead and add the holly berries next. So we're going to take 3 of those 5 pom-poms that we've got for our pattern, and these are the berries for our holly, so we're going to just set them. I like mine to be kind of clustered together in a group of 3 right next to where that leaf is, kind of nestled up. So if this is going to be, again, a gift for a young child who's very lovey-dovey, you may want to sew those on. Mine's just a decoration though, so I'm going to hot glue mine on. Alright, so there are those 3 holly berries attached alongside the holly leaf. And we are ready to move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next up we're making the arms, and we need to make 2, so I'll walk you through how to make the first, and you need to come back, make a second, and then we'll get them attached together to the body. Starting with this light taupe brown colored yarn, we need to form another magic ring. Alright, so now that I have my magic ring formed, I'm ready for round 1, where we need to place 8 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Don't forget to mark your first stitch. Alright, so when you have all 8 of your single crochet stitches inside of that ring, we can hold on to that last single crochet stitch we made and pull our tail to close off round 1, which sets us up for round 2. We're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around for rounds 2 and 3. So here I am starting it on round 2. Alright, so that's round 2 done. I'm going to pull my magic ring tail really tightly one last time, and then give it a trim before I move on to round 3. So trim it short, not off. It's going to hide out inside the arm. Alright, so I'm ready for round 3. Just 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around, but we're going to pause on that last stitch because we have a color change coming up. Alright, so here I am on my 7th single crochet stitch, and I have my 8th unworked. So our next round, which is round 4, is going to be in white. So we need to switch colors here on this last stitch. So I like to do this by going through, yarning under and drawing up a loop. And then I'm going to draw through these 2 loops with my new color. So I'm gonna take my brown, we're leaving it attached because we only need one round of white. It's like the icing that goes around the bands of a gingerbread man's arms. We're gonna lay the brown to the back side of our work and then grab our white and kind of fold it over on itself. Make a little baby loop here with it with a little tail. And then we're gonna put that loop on our hook and pull it through those 2 loops that we left. So that finishes off that 8th single crochet stitch from this round here and gives us a white loop so we can start working in white for round 4. So as we work the next couple of stitches of round 4, we're going to want to work this little baby tail in as we go to secure this color change. So I'm going to give the brown a pull, and then I'm going to hold on to the loop here on my hook and give the white tail a little bit of a pull too. And then I'm ready to start in on round 4. So I'll take my marker out, tension that white yarn, and then go through that first stitch. Then I'm going to lay the white tail over my hook and then work my stitch normally. And when you lay your tail over your hook like that, it sort of works it in on the back side of your stitch. So we're going to work that tail in. I like to work it in for pretty much the full round here on round 4. So I'm just going to carry it with me, and your brown is just chilling on the back side of your work, right where we left it at the beginning of the row. We're just going to keep working around all 8 of these stitches in white. I'm just working that tail in as I go. Alright, so here I am on the 7th stitch of this round. And then we're switching back to brown for the remainder of the arm, which is 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we'll need to switch colors again, and just like we did the first time, we're going to go through, yarn under, and draw up a loop in white. And then we need to draw through in the brown that we left attached to finish the stitch off. So go ahead, drop the white to the back, grab your brown, then yarn over and draw through those 2 loops left. So we're done with the white. We can go ahead and give it a trim. And leave yourself a little tail on this one because we're going to want to weave this in just like we did with the first white tail last round. And we are ready for round 5. So rounds 5 through 8, we're going to be adding just 1 single crochet stitch in brown all the way around. But I'll work the first couple of stitches of round 5 with you so you can see how to work the tail in again. So we're going to go through that first stitch of the round, lay that white tail that we just cut and not the one that we already worked in. If you're not sure, you can do both, it doesn't really matter. Yarn under and draw up a loop, and yarn over and draw through both. We're just going to work these tails in for a few stitches of this round, really securing that color change. Alright, so there's 3 stitches worked in over those tails. I'll take the remainder of the tails, twist them together, and then I'm just going to push them to the inside of the arm. They count as free stuffing, which is nice. So I'm just going to continue working around, working all of my stitches for rounds 5 through 8. And I'll see you back here at the end of round 8 when we're ready to close off, stuff and close off the top of the arm. Alright, so I just made the last single crochet stitch of round 8, and before I make round 9, which is the last round of the arm, I'm going to put some stuffing on the inside here. We don't need a lot, just a little pinch, and push it all the way down to the end of the arm. Alright, so with the stuffing added, I'm ready for round 9, which is the last round of the arm. We'll take our stitch marker out, and we're actually going to be folding the top of our arm in half, and then single crocheting these stitches together. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to push it through this layer of my fabric and then swing around and grab the back layer of my fabric and then make a single crochet stitch through both layers. So sometimes it takes me 3 stitches to get all the way across, sometimes it takes me 4 stitches to get all the way across. As long as the top of the arm is closed, then you are golden. Alright, so that only took me 3 stitches, so I'm ready to fasten off. I need to reserve a long tail to sew with. We don't need too terribly much, 12 inches probably should do it. And then to finish fastening off, we're going to yarn over and draw the tail we just cut right through that loop and keep pulling until it passes through, and then tighten it down. Alright, so there is one of the arms complete. We need to make one more, and then we can get them attached to the body. So let's get one more made and then get to sewing. Alright, so I've got both arms made and I'm ready to get them attached. So I'm going to start with one arm, threading the tail left over through the eye of my needle. And then the arms are going to be attached to either side of the body, and then pretty close to where the head and the neck meet. Maybe that second round after that last round on the body. And we're going to attach it by just sewing into some of the fabric of body and up through that last row we made where we single crocheted the arms together. And we're just going to keep working along each of those stitches that we single crocheted together until we're all the way across. So here's this last one here on the front. Gets the arm attached. I'm going to sew down into the fabric of the body and then out through just a random spot, and then tie my surface knot. So I'll get that tied. Doesn't really matter where this surface knot goes because we're working with the same color that the body is. Then weave the tail in and trim any remainder that you didn't weave in. Here's that first arm attached. We're going to do the same thing with the other arm here on the other side. Alright, and there are both of the arms attached, so we're ready to move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, next up is the bow tie. So we're going to be working with this red colored yarn, and we're ready to go ahead and get a slip knot formed because we're going to be chaining. Alright, so to start in on the bow tie for round 1, we're going to chain 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then in the second chain from our hook, we're going to place our first single crochet stitch, and then continue adding single crochet stitches in the 3 remaining chain stitches. So 1, 2, 3 before our slip knot. So now that we're at our slip knot, we're going to add 3 single crochet stitches to flip us around to the other side of our chain. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to be working down the other side of our chain and weaving in our tail as we go, adding 1 single crochet stitch to these 4 chain stitches on this side. So 2, 3, and 4. Alright, that's round 1 done. Round 2, we're going to put an increase in that first single crochet stitch we made here when we skipped over a chain and made our single crochet stitch in the second. So we're going to put an increase in this stitch. And then mark that first single crochet stitch that you just made for your increase. So there's that first single crochet stitch marked. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and then 3 increases. These should be placed in those 3 single crochet stitches we placed in our slip knot before we flipped over to the other side. So 1 increase here, second increase here, last increase. Then we've got 1 single crochet stitch to add in the next 2 stitches. So 1, 2, and then 2 increases, 1 in the last 2 stitches. So increase here and increase here. Right, that's round 2 done. Round 3, the last round we've got here. Starting by placing a single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, remark, then 1 increase in the next stitch, 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. 2, 3. Then we're going to repeat the pattern of 1 single crochet stitch, increase 3 times. So 1 single crochet stitch, increase, 1 single crochet stitch, increase, last single crochet stitch, last increase. Then we'll put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. Repeat that pattern we just repeated 2 more times. So 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, increase, and 1 last time. 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase. Alright, so we're ready to fasten off. Take our stitch marker out. We will slip stitch where our marker just was. And then we need a long tail because we're going to use it to sort of wrap around the center of our bow tie and sew our bow tie on. So save yourself 24 inches, I think minimum, maybe a little more. I really don't like running out. Then we're going to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook and keep pulling until our tail passes through, and then tighten. If you were a good noodle like me and you wove your tail in from your slip knot, you can trim it. If not, you'll need to weave it in. Then we're going to take the long tail that we've cut here and get it threaded through the eye of our needle. And we're going to sew in and out through these next 5 stitches or so. So down through, back up, kind of working our way along, sending this tail along these stitches until we get to about the center of this oval shape. All right, I'm going to go down through that 5th stitch here. And that puts our tail in the center of the bow tie, which is what we want because we're going to cinch this oval shape together. So I like to kind of pinch it and then sew through all of those layers of fabric that I've pinched together, clear to the other side, and then pull pretty tight, but not so tight that you pull the stitches that you sewed to get to this side. All right, so you can see I've got that cinch, and then we're gonna really reinforce it by wrapping our yarn around and around, forming the center of the bow tie. And if you need to kind of readjust, you can sort of flip these stitches out and around as you wrap. We're going to keep wrapping until we have a nice center to our bow tie, like I've got here. Then we need to secure all of these wraps, so we'll flip our work over, make sure that the yarn that we're wrapping with is at the back side of our bow tie, and we're going to tie a sneaky surface knot here. So holding tightly to your work, make a loop, sew up through some of those wraps on the back side of the bow, and then pull. Just going to tie a knot. And that gets our bow tie formed. Feel free to kind of pull at the stitches here to give it a nice shape. So I'm going to kind of stretch these stitches out a little bit, shape our bow tie a bit. But then we're ready to get it attached to our Gingerbread Buddy's neck. Let's go ahead and grab him. And it's going to slot right up underneath the smile. And I like to attach mine by wrapping the yarn around his neck and then sewing up through the opposite side of the bow tie, pulling tight, but not so tight that it sucks the bow tie into the crevice between his head and his body. So I like kind of have that yarn wrapped around his neck like an actual bow tie's strap would be. Then I'll sew down and into the fabric right behind where this bow tie is. Make sure I've got it centered the way I like it, and I do. And since the bow tie is going to sit here, we can tie our surface knot, securing this bow tie just on the fabric of the body behind where the bow tie is. And get that all wrapped around, tie that knot, and then weave that extra tail from the bow tie into the body. Unthread your needle, Double check your bow tie looks the way you want it to look. Mine looks pretty good. Then we can pull that tail tight and trim, which gets it woven in and gets our bow tie attached. Alright, so now is as good a time as any to get the gumdrop buttons on. So we'll take the 2 remaining pom-poms that we have. And again, if this is going to be for someone small who's full of lots of love, you may want to sew these on. I'm going to go ahead and just glue these 2 pom-poms on. So the first one's going to kind of go up closer to the bow tie and in line with the center. Alright, those are the gumdrop buttons and bow tie attached. Let's move on to the last part of our pattern, which is the legs. Alright, last up we have the legs. You need to make 2. I'll walk you through how to make the first. Then we'll go back together and attach them at the end. So let's go ahead with this light brown taupe colored yarn. Form another magic ring. Alright, we're ready for round 1. We're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring. Once you've got all 6 single crochet stitches, you can pull the tail to close round 1. Ready for round 2. We're going to increase in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's the last increase of round 2 for me. I'm going to pull the magic ring tail tight one last time. Flip my work over and give it a trim. And I'm ready for round 3, where I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of my round. Follow it with an increase. Then repeat that 5 more times for a total of 6 repeats. 1 single crochet stitch, increase. Alright, so that's the end of round 3. Rounds 4, 5, and 6, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So I'll catch you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 6 and we're ready to fasten off. Alright, so there's that last single crochet stitch in round 6, ready to fasten off. Take my stitch marker out, slip stitch in the stitch it was just in, and then reserve a tail to sew with. 12 to 14 inches or so ought to cover you. And then we're going to pull until that tail passes through our slip stitch and tighten down. So there's one of the legs done. We need to make a second and then we can get them attached. Alright, I've got both of my legs done and I'm ready to get them attached to the body. So I'm going to start with the first leg here and I need to add a little stuffing to the inside. Alright, now that it's stuffed, I'm going to go ahead and grab my Gingerbread Buddy and the legs are going to go on to the inside of the arms and then also so that this bottom round where the front loops are left behind lines up with sort of the bottom of the foot here. So it's going to kind of position on, they're a little closer together than the arms are, about 4 stitches apart across the front. So you can see this other leg's going to slot on about here. So I've got this stuffed, I've got it positioned. I'll go ahead and thread the eye of my needle with the tail from this one. And I like to rotate it so that I'm starting by sewing through these loops left behind. So I'm going to snag that loop, snag this loop here, stitch from the foot, work my way around, whip stitching these on. We don't have to back stitch, this is the same color as the body, so the stitches are already kind of hide out. So I'm just going to sew all the way across the bottom of the foot, grabbing those front loops that I left behind on the body. Then I'm just going to whip stitch each stitch from the foot all the way around until it's completely attached. Alright, so I have sewn all the way around the foot. It is completely attached. We'll tie another surface knot here. And then weave this tail in and trim any excess. Alright, so that is the first foot attached. We're going to repeat on the other side with the other foot, starting with the stuffing. Alright, so with that last leg sewn on, your gingerbread buddy is complete. So as always, thank you for tuning in and watching my tutorial. If you would consider giving my channel a subscription, that shows me that you like what I do and you'd like to see more. Alright, happy crafting everyone!